have just advanced to the NFC Championship to face the Philadelphia Eagles. What a game against Dallas. And David and I are going to talk about it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And I got my boy David with me here for the post game per usual. San Francisco 49ers just advanced to the NFC Championship back-to-back years. Let's go, David. How you doing, man?
Oh, bro. I mean, I'm sitting here watching with my buddy he's a Vikings fan. He lives here. He's one of my best friends. He always wears his Roger Craig jersey when he watches Niners games with me. And I mean, this game couldn't have been, there's a lot of back and forth. There was a lot, just, staying close. But I tell you what, I think that one of the things that you saw of this team is that it's been a while. Everybody said they couldn't face a mark defense, and the Cowboys came to play today, and the Niners D came to play today. And at the end of the day, they held. And wow, look, the NFC Championship game, baby, Final Four.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you just a quick story here, and this is the most exciting thing that came out of this game for me. First of all, I didn't have nerves at all the whole game, David. I think even in talking to you through text, you could probably pick up that I was pretty confident throughout the whole course of the game. Never really any nerves, never too high, too low, whatever, which is odd for a playoff game. I felt so confident in this team. However, I've got to say, my wife, who could give two rips about any football, this was the proudest moment for me. I go in to go get my hat, brush my teeth, whatever, get ready for the end of the show, like 4 minutes left in the game. And I go in the room, and what do I see but my wife watching the 49er game and celebrating for the 49ers win. That to me was like the coolest thing that just happened tonight. Like I said, my wife doesn't give a rip about football, but she cared enough tonight to where she on her own was watching the game to make sure the 49ers won. That was pretty big. So as a fan, I love that.
Yeah, it shows that you've done something right as a husband, Jesse. I mean, you've somewhere along the line, you've made an influence. It sunk in, and I have to say, my wife is so supportive of doing all this stuff with me and everything Niners. She grew up in Green Bay, diehard Packers fans everywhere, but like your wife, she supports it, but she doesn't give a shit about so it's like, so she's dealing with me. You said you were no nerves. I didn't have nerves at the beginning of the game, but boy, there were some, just some head scratching plays sometimes where I'm sitting here pacing, my buddy's sitting here, I'm getting like amped up and she's just laughing, so it was great.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe it's just the simple fact that I don't have to worry about Jimmy effing it off. I don't know, but literally first game, no nerves. I figured, okay, it's just Seattle, no big deal. This one, no nerves leading up to it. You would think as the game got tight, but man, I was nothing. So I think the Eagles will bring it out of me, quite possibly, but I'm just super confident in this team right now. Twisted Clown already hopping in says, nerve-wracking win. Thanks, Dallas, for bringing Kyle back to usual stumbling all over himself. I hope we will be ready and fully healthy for Philly. We're going to talk about the offense and where we place some blame potentially. Lakarai says edibles wore off at halfway through the game. Was losing my freaking mind, but we pulled that one out. Let's go Niners. And wow, Cowboys. Just wow. Yeah, I got to say, the Cowboys. Let's just talk about it here for a second. Do you think that there was an element of luck that played into tonight's win? You're muted. We're
going to talk about a lot of that. I mean, there are plays that people missed. But look, when you talk about luck, guys, like both teams had good plays. Both teams made mistakes. Both teams had fortuitous plays that went their way. Both teams had personal fouls. Both teams had special teams plays. But I mean, I honestly don't think that I really watched the game in its totality and walk away thinking, oh God, the Niners just like totally got bailed by the refs or totally got bailed by a lucky bounce of the ball. In fact, the Niners, I mean, Dre Greenlaw dropped 2 would-be pick sixes. I mean, or missed one, dropped another. I mean, even and at the end of the game, Eric Armstead almost had a safety. Just like, how did that not happen? I mean, there's a lot of little things that didn't go their way. And if anything, I actually feel the 49ers really exceeded some of the mistakes that they made that put them in a bad spot. And I think that the biggest thing I take away from this is this defense got back to being the defense that you trusted. And that's what I was nervous because the offense wasn't functioning where I've been used to it doing the last 7 weeks.
Right.
I was never nervous when the defense was on the field. And that is a great feeling. And that is a great sign going into the game at Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me hit this one real quick and I'll give my thoughts. Kyle's conservative play calling. He's the problem. We'll talk about it. Okay. I got you. I do think here's the thing. And I don't look at luck as a bad thing. I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, luck, I mean, you're taking credit away from them. And that's not where I'm going at all. There's an old saying that says it's better to be lucky than good sometimes. And I feel like in this scenario, you had a kicker that had the yips. They didn't trust him until he finally made a chip shot field goal, which then allowed them to trust him a little bit later, but they passed up points because of that. They lost a point on the extra point because of that. And then I think losing Tony Pollard was huge for this game and possibly how it resulted. And I'm not saying Dallas would have won. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it definitely changed the aspect of this game. I mean, when your defensive coordinator goes into the game and says, hey, this is the guy that we're focusing on most, that tells you how big of a loss it is for the Dallas Cowboys. But at the end of the day, the 49ers did exactly what they needed to do. They took care of business. Dallas, quite frankly, had their chances. They had their chances. And man, coaching has to be to blame, but they cannot manage a clock worth a damn, David. The punt and how long it took, how much time they blew on the other side of the 2-minute warning. Dalton Schultz can't even get a second foot down on a gimme reception. Like they don't deserve to win either. Like they just didn't deserve to win, and the 49ers did what they were supposed to do.
And the punt there, I think you can't overstate this. I just get like I don't know. I grew up around balls. My dad being a college football referee and college basketball referee. I'm always watching the game from a referee standpoint. And then I think also because of that, I'm looking at the clock. I'm watching the clock management, and this, it just boggles my mind that I was telling my buddy, I said, hey, it's 3rd and 10. If you don't get this play here, you got to be ready to punt. You have to. You have 3 timeouts. And the fact that they took 30 seconds, I mean, it's like he was hemming and hawing. It's like he was like, well, I should get off the pot. Like you can't do that. Like you just can't. And I mean, look, if Elijah Mitchell if Elijah Mitchell stays in bounds, they're not even, throwing a Hail Mary. So there's different things like that. I just want to tell you, so the question is 49ers get lucky. No, I actually think the 49ers made their own luck. And I think that the way they're playing defensively, they were due a game on offense to have some things that just didn't go their way right away. But I'll tell you what, they had resolve. They stuck it out. This Cowboys offense was the number 1 offense the second half of the season, more than the 49ers. Okay.
Yep.
Since the Kansas City Chiefs game, right? Since CMC came over. Yeah. They were a little bit more with Purdy, but the Cowboys have been scoring more points, more yards per play, more explosive plays. And they held that team to 12 points. They missed 1 extra point. He didn't miss any field goals. Okay. They held them in the red zone. They had turnovers in the red zone. Look, if this defense can play that like this against this explosive offense in Dallas, I'm telling you right now, there is not a team that wants to line up against those guys. And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Charles Omenihu did leave the game with a quad injury as well. Speaking of injuries, so I don't know, quad oblique, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he left the game. We'll see if he's able to play next week. Drake Jackson has not been suiting up whatsoever, so I would assume that he would all of a sudden be active if Omenihu can't go. But definitely a depth piece to look at potentially going forward. Rob Gotti says football can be an ugly game. Just win, baby, and I agree with you. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to win. All right, let's talk about let's talk about Kyle's coaching over these next two topics, because a lot of people are upset with the way that he coached this game. And I think it starts with the final first half drive. I think a lot of people were looking at the way the 49ers were playing up to this point and said, okay, well, they've got time. Go get yourself a score here. You have plenty of time to go get a touchdown. And they nonchalantly ran a couple times, waited about 20 seconds or so, 28 seconds, I believe, to call a timeout, and then finally started to throw the ball and were able to get the field goal. But what were your thoughts about how Kyle handled the final first half drive?
Yeah, and so here's the thing. I'm a Kyle lifetime contract guy. And that doesn't mean I don't ever have any nuanced reactions. It also doesn't prevent me from having emotional reactions either. So, we're texting back and forth. I do think that in that situation, what was odd to me was that Kyle seemed to trust the team that they could succeed. It looked like he was content just having it tied at half. That's the thing. Yep. People said, oh, he's playing for a field goal. No, he was content to maybe have a chance at a field goal, a 50-yard field goal. Right. But like at that point, burning that timeout, that was an uphill battle. And so there was this question is like, okay, does he trust Purdy to pass? And I think there's some legitimate concern there, right? Kyle has shown that he's sometimes slow to trust. And in big games, he kind of goes into his shell. It ended up working out. But after that third down, it was all trust in Purdy's arm. And then with 7 seconds left, I'm thinking, trot Robbie out right now. What if something goes wrong? What if he gets sacked? It's over. There's no timeouts left, right? And thankfully, that 1 second, I mean, that was a big play. Like that, look, I'm sorry, like that was one of the biggest plays of the game. And Purdy wasn't perfect there, but I also think you put your offense in a position where you're like, you really don't want to walk out of it with an attempt. So that was my one big quibble, right, with Kyle. I think there was some other elements where the 49ers run motion on 83% of this, and this is a crazy stat. 83% of their plays, 83% all year long, they've got guys in motion. Nobody's even close to that. I think the next team is like at 71 or something like that. Okay. Next team is like 65. That's something I wasn't seeing a lot early in the game. And it felt like they were scripted. It felt like they were hell-bent on setting that up. And I know they started gouging them later in the run game, but that's my one big quibble. I wanted to see a little bit more creativity because I did think that he was Purdy was throwing the ball. He wasn't just sitting here and saying we're going to be completely vanilla. So yeah, other than that, no, I'm not going to throw Kyle under the bus. I thought Kyle came back, got in his bag, had a really creative play with Kyle Juszczyk that led to the next touchdown by CMC at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And at the end of the day, he had his team in positions to succeed, and you win by a touchdown in a game that you were supposed to be -4. So it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Blank, great name, says, compare the Eagles and the Cowboys. Did we just beat a similar team? Yes, 100%. I think. Oh, yeah. And I thought I had said this on a show. If not, I definitely thought it. And I agree with you. I think the Cowboys are basically like a watered down version of the Eagles as far as what they bring to the table. The Eagles have a better defensive line, believe it or not. Dallas definitely got after Purdy, especially in that first half. The Eagles can bring it even more than that. Neither one of them have great linebacking cores. Both have good secondaries. You've got a quarterback who's mobile, albeit Hurts is more mobile. Good offensive lines. Yeah, very similar built teams. I think Philly's just a slightly better version. And then you got to go on the road to beat Philly as well. CB Niner says 98% sure. Amenahu came back and played in the second half. He did. He was in on that third down, one of the big third down stops, I believe. But, you got an oblique or quad or whatever it was. Those things can linger, it depends on what's going on there. So let's hope he's good to go. But, we'll see. Well, if he's not, then Drake Jackson gets activated. It is what it is. But yeah, it's, it's definitely one of those things that we got to keep an eye out for. But he was able to come back. Yes. 2.0. Let's go. Nice to see the D again bounce back after big mistake, and ultimately winning the turnover battle was big. Philly is -1.5 favorite. Please be healthy. I think we're okay. Yeah. I guess the other thing is Christian McCaffrey. He was kind of in and out. You could see he was dealing with some sort of calf issue, which I believe Kyle Shanahan has talked about for the last couple of weeks. So I think he'll be fine, but he's definitely working that out. 2.0 line already moved to 2. Like us in this spot, though, if Dallas plays, or excuse me, if the D plays like that, it's going to be tough on Hurts. What can we expect with the Philly defense? We're going to talk about Philly. We're going to end the show on Philly. Let's go through this one, but 2.0, I promise you, we'll talk all about Philly because that is the matchup. That is the heavyweight fight for sure. Cryptic says for the first time, he play called like Purdy was Garoppolo and not letting him sling it. That made him get him this far. But let's go Niners. So he basically saying, hey, he handicapped Purdy and Purdy's been great this far. So why?
I don't agree with that. I mean, if we go back to the game, I mean, I'm not going to box score scout. I mean, I'm just going back from like what I watched. But if I, let's, I am going to bring up though. I mean, 29 attempts, guys.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo had 8 attempts in the NFC Championship. He almost threw the ball 30 times. You can't say, and this is a close game. This wasn't a blowout. This wasn't like coming back to win. This wasn't like, the only time they were down 6-3. That was the only time they were down in this game. Okay. So you can't tell me, I mean, Purdy averaging again, you can talk about yak, whatever, all you want. 7.4 yards a pass on 29 attempts. That doesn't tell me that Kyle didn't trust Purdy to throw the ball or didn't want him throwing the ball. Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, in a close game, you could think, oh, hey, I'm going to run right. I'm sorry. Like, yeah. Then the Cowboys rush defense, by the way, played really good today, but they're not one of the greatest rushing defenses in the NFL. And so in that situation, Kyle, I think, adjusted. And so, no, this is where I'm going to push back. I don't think Kyle trusts Brock Purdy to be the manifestation of everything Kyle dreams of in the utopian quarterback. Right. But I do think the proof is in the pudding and that Kyle absolutely is saying, here you go, bud. It's like, I'm sorry, you can't. And usually in close games, I guarantee you go back, you're never going to see quarterbacks throwing 30 times a game in a game like this. And Brock was. So, I just don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think I'll push back slightly. I don't think it was fully the Jimmy game plan. I think a lot of it more, and I could be wrong, but maybe Cryptic is saying from a standpoint of where the throws were and how far downfield he was throwing. A lot of it was in the middle of the field, a lot of slants, a lot of short stuff. You didn't see the deep digs that you saw last week, but I think a lot of that is just Dallas being better than Seattle. I mean, quite frankly, and once the pass rush started getting home the way that it was and they were able to stop the run game, it really kind of tied Kyle's hands as to what was available to him. It's not like you can go play action all game when they're not, I wouldn't say worried about the run, but they were stopping the run just fine. And so once you start going play action and, you're not going to have Ayuk running over the middle of the field. And even if you do, there were times where Purdy was just getting rushed immediately. So you kind of got to just adjust like, all right, well, we'll turn it into a quick pass game, figure this out. And, to me, I look at it and just going back to the final first half drive here, it was a little off. And I'll say when they ran the first 2 times, I'm like, does he not trust Purdy in this situation? Like what's going on? It doesn't seem like he does. But then he opened it up again and started passing. It reminded me, actually, oddly enough, we're getting ready to play Philly. It reminded me of the game last year when they played Philly. He played it very similar with Jimmy Garoppolo. And if you remember, Jimmy Garoppolo made one of his better throws, I thought, of the season to end that first half to Deebo Samuel on like a kind of like a post. I mean, it wasn't quite a slant. It wasn't quite a post, but either way, hit him between 2 defenders right in the window. And I thought bailed out Kyle Shanahan in making it to where they could get points to end that half. I felt like this was actually pretty similar. It was like, okay, you didn't necessarily manage the clock great. You put a lot on Purdy to go make these plays. And yes, you got guys open, thank God, but Purdy kind of bailed you out and you were able to get the points. So, it was a weird situation.
I want to hammer on that, though, because this is where I want to push. And then we going back in our text talking about this, too. But this is where I felt like, hey, Kyle was getting into the more like conservative Kyle. I don't think that meant that, oh, my God, I can't let Brock Purdy throw the ball. And like he definitely, and this is the thing, if he didn't trust him, I felt very strongly with 7 seconds left and you're looking at a 50-yard field goal. If you're like if he gets sacked, it's over. And I just and people say, oh, he didn't get the ball, he got the ball away. Well, you snap the ball, you're looking for something, and I get it. He should have thrown it away, but like I just don't. I think that Purdy, all things considered, made Kyle look made Kyle's decision to kind of milk that clock look better than it was.
Yeah.
I don't think the decision was great. So anyway, bottom line is, like, I think that you're right. I think that Cryptic, I think there were some elements of that you're saying is correct. I wasn't trying to clown you or anything like that. I just think that, like, I do think that if it was completely pulling the reins in, it would have been more run heavy, and it wasn't.
Yeah, and I think, it's hard, right? Like you throw $5 up, you only have limited characters. So I was just trying my best to maybe explain the other side of what he could have meant. And it's okay. I mean, shoot, if you don't agree, you don't agree. Like, push back, push back all you want. Errol Tolbert comes in and says, "Did Kinlaw even play? And is it time to let him go?" I got to be honest, I didn't even recognize Kinlaw on the field. I didn't see him flash. I didn't see nothing.
And this is the thing, though. I don't even know. I guess he's healthy. The bottom line is, like, I know he's under. You talk about load management in the NBA, right? I think there's fair to say that there's probably. I think it's fair to say that Kinlaw's not exactly like 100%. And
no.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying like he's hobbled. Like he can't go play football, but like it's clear. And the bottom line is, this also speaks to the faith that D'Amico Ryans has in the depth that they have on that defensive line. And you're right. I think it's a valid question. I'm not going to clown Kinlaw, but the bottom line is, like, is it time to let him go? They don't have to. I mean, he's still under contract, and he was drafted in 2020.
But they do got to decide on the 5th-year option. So let me ask you this.
Yeah, they won't do that.
Okay. All right. And that's where I'm at with it. Again, this goes back to last year. And I may be wrong. Obviously, I don't know. I'm just going off of my personal experience with my knees, my ankles, the issues I've dealt with. And I said last year, when he took that flight to Santa Clara for training camp and his knee swelled up on him many months after having surgery, I said, it's degenerative. I'm sorry. There's something else in there. There's arthritis. There's whatever.
Well, I have early onset. And people say, well, you're not. I know it's different. Like, I was a competitive Ironman marathoner, things like that. Yeah. Never had any problems. Just went in and got an MRI because something was bothering me. Arthritis, like, it's not because of the running that I got arthritis. Right. It's genetic. And it's like, so this idea that it's not hurting me now, but at that point, what I've noticed too, like with Kinlaw, I can't now, if I start doing more intense activity, my knee starts lubricating. It could swell. It could fill up a ganglion. This is a 300+ pound man who's torquing his body as much as he is, and he already has it much more severe than I do. And I think people need to understand, like, this is, I mean, I'm not Nostradamus here, but I don't think you have to be to understand that. I think his career probably isn't going to last that much longer. Yeah. And it really is too bad, because he could be a hell of a player. And like I said, I don't know for sure. I don't take this as gospel or whatever. This is just my opinions and what I thought last year. Then he had the surgery, and they talked it up. He's going to be fine. This, that, the third. Well, then once his knee swells up on him again and he starts to miss time, Kyle Shanahan was asked about, well, was this a possibility, the knee swelling and filling up with fluid? And he answers, yeah, we knew that was a possibility. That, again, that tells me that's a degenerative issue. Yeah. And I can tell you, so somebody who has arthritis in my right knee, there are days where I'm fine. Hell, I just played basketball on Saturday, and I was good. I was able to play, no problem, no issues. Today I wake up, it's very stiff. I'm not very mobile, and that's just the reality of the situation. So now if I go to play basketball again, I'm going to have to wait a few weeks. I'm going to have to ice it. I'm going to have to rest it, and I'll be able to play again, but it's about managing things. And so I think that's where Kinlaw's at, unfortunately. And it's not going to go away. This is the thing. The arthritis, you can't, like my guy who was going to give me surgery, like you don't, it's like you're going to get your knee. His knees have to be replaced at some point. The bottom line is, like, at this point, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube with arthritis. And I think a lot of fans don't quite understand exactly what arthritis is. Like, it is degenerative. It's not like it doesn't get better. No, you know what I mean? You can manage it, but it doesn't get better.
Yeah. And you can scope it and have it clean, but it just grows right back. It's, so again, I don't know for sure. Everything falls in line with that. I would say, again, he'll be on the team next year, I would assume, unless it's really bad and he has to retire, which I hope that's not the case. But after that, I don't see them picking up the 5th-year option, and I can't blame them. It's tough at this point. So Glass City says, no, the D-line needs to step up. What was the pressure percentage? Okay. I mean, we can talk about that for a second. I mean, I think there were definitely times where you were screaming into your phone, David, and Marco and I were like, where's the pressure? What's going on? No pressure.
It hit. They started firing in the second half, though. And that was the thing. Like, and at the beginning, and I think that's the thing. We've talked about this defense is predicated on pressure. And everybody's saying, like, oh, this look, cornerbacks are gonna like, I think I'm guilty of this as well over my lifetime as a fan. You see cornerback give up a play and you're like, oh my God, how did you get beat? It's like you're one-on-one. And sometimes these guys make good plays. And when your defense is predicated on pressure and they're not getting home, it puts you in a tough spot. And when a ball, it's not just a 50-50 ball, but one guy gets it, one guy doesn't. And if one guy beats you and it's a 30-yard gain, it makes you look like a clown. It's not necessarily the case. And so I think that's one of the things that I was a little bit concerned with. But boy, they really started amping it up in the third and fourth quarter. And I think that it was, though, it didn't, I don't know if they recorded, did they record a sack? Did Ebukam, when he got back to the line of scrimmage, that's not considered, I don't know if they actually got a sack all night. I don't think they did.
I thought they did. I don't, dude. You can check it out. Spy versus Spy, you're emotional. I have no idea what you're talking about, bud. I don't remember saying anything about Purdy being bad or any of that. So, peace, I guess. 2.0 says, not sure Kyle lets Jimmy Garoppolo throw right before that 2-minute warning, or even the last one to CMC didn't like before the half play calling, but the end was okay. Yeah, and I think that's what we saw, right? I think that's what we saw. Yes, we did, Sean. Yes, we did. I think that's what we saw. I think, to me, when I talked about the game plan of how I thought this game could potentially play out, I had hoped that the 49ers were going to come out early, a couple play action passes, to try to open things up, because you don't have to run the ball to get respect. They already respect you running the ball. So I figured, okay, come out, play action, a couple plays. But for the rest of the first half, I said, go run right at Parsons, kind of store up those plays like body blows in a boxing fight. And eventually you get to those later rounds, those body blows add up and you can start gashing them. And I felt like that's kind of what happened. I mean, offensively, defensively, you could just start to see the physicality of the 49ers that had happened throughout the course of that game really start to wear on Dallas. And eventually they just folded. They couldn't stop anymore. And it was too late, too little, too late. And the 49ers did their thing. That's the way I felt about it.
Yeah, no. And I think that's one of the things that helped is that I got the one play, I think it was 4th and 4. They sent Fred kind of on an inside stunt there. And I know Marco is way better at this than I am. He's like, hey, the defensive tackle actually kind of stayed out of his gap integrity and kind of didn't give enough space for Warner to get through. And I was like, hey, the biggest thing I brought on Ryan Hensley's show, I've talked about it all week, is like if D'Amico gets a little greedy with Fred, I really get worried about taking the best coverage linebacker maybe in the history of the NFL. This is not hyperbole. Fred Warner is good. He's just ridiculous. Yeah. And as evidenced by, Jimmy Ward makes the play. Jimmy Ward drops the interception, right? I mean, great play. He went in there, but then Fred's opportunistic. He's right there. CeeDee Lamb. Okay, I'm sorry. You're not going to see people say, hey, he should have turned around. If he turns around, people forget that, like, you turn around, you move your arms, you kind of lost. He said, I'm following this guy's eyes. I'm staying with it. And that was not a drop. Like, that was like down there. He had his fingertips on it. Insane. There are just there's nobody in the NFL that can do that at the linebacker position. There's nobody. And I think that's where I see, that's the thing that I felt great about, because D'Amico was speaking about it, but like, I feel like when you get greedy, taking Fred out of the middle of the field it's just too big of a risk to me. And I know that sounds like I'm being kind of, eat my cake, I have my cake and eat it too kind of thing. But like, you see what he does. You see what problems he poses. Dak Prescott a couple times had some crazy arm angles to try to get around Fred. And did or did not. But like, it was, right. Fred has an uncanny ability to just alter throws. And so
all the time.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, all all the time. And that's one thing that we talked about with Dallas too, is like, okay, you line up CeeDee Lamb in the slot. It makes it very difficult because how do you cover him? Well, Fred Warner was covering him. I mean, put that in perspective for a second. CeeDee Lamb is on his way to being a top 10, top 15 receiver in this league. And Fred Warner is going step for step with him up the seam, one-on-one. I mean, that's next level stuff. Fred Warner is a different animal. And there's only one Fred Warner. And thank God he's on the 49ers. Absolutely. 2.0 says, also found it interesting that Travarius Ward knew the out of bounds rule at the end, but Mitchell didn't. Yeah, that was interesting. Matt Flores says 0 picks for Brock Purdy. Would Jimmy have done that? Nope. No. Jimmy wouldn't have done that. Kinlaw played. Yeah, we know he played. We just didn't see him flash. I'm sure he did some things throughout the game. All 22 will pick it up or whatever, but he just didn't flash. Glass City says, I don't think the Niners will beat Philly playing like that. Average pass rush, sloppy offensive execution. What do you think, Jesse? I agree. It's going to take more than that to beat Philly. I 100% agree with you. Cryptic says, yes, I meant there were elements. Sorry about that. I will say the game proved the Niners can keep up with the elites, also run Mitchell more up the gut. So he's the one that was talking about the Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo game plan. He was trying to clarify basically what I was saying, like elements of it were similar to Jimmy Garoppolo. Kalia Davis, maybe. I mean, in the future, for sure. Absolutely. Warner Masterclass, completely agree. 49ers Cade, 100%. Willie Mendoza says, should we be worried about how this offense played, or do we give Dallas the credit for preparing against a Shanahan offense? Well, let's go to the next one here, because this is right in line with the next topic. Offensive woes. We talked about the first half, but overall, 19 points, and the defense gave them good field position. After the Lenore interception, they were only able to get 3. Then you had the run back that got them near like the 50-yard line. They didn't score any points. So the offense had their opportunities. They definitely had their woes. And I'll just ask you, David. I mean, Willie asks a great question here. Are we concerned with the offense, or do we give credit for Dallas?
I'm going to give credit to Dallas, and this is the thing where and there's some concerns, right? Like, I felt like, though, this is why I'm week to week, we see teams match up against another team, and all of a sudden you kind of lose track of the body of work and what a team is actually really capable of. Midway through the season and into that third of this, I don't know, 2/3 through the season, I was saying, and I called my Super Bowl pick at the beginning of the year was Cowboys Chiefs. Okay. And before the season started, midway through the season, the Cowboys had shown me now after Dak came back with Cooper Rush going back, and this defense was, to me, just as lethal. I said it. I'll pull my receipts. I'll put them on the Twitter tonight. Like, I thought the Cowboys defense was just as good, if not maybe better than the Niners defense earlier in the season. They have those pieces. They have these elite players, and they're explosive. And guess what? Their offense continued to do that. Defense had a little regression, but this defense was still lights out. DVOA, everything other metric that you could find to be reliable. Like, they're a good team. Like, they're really one of the most balanced teams in the NFL.
Yeah,
and I think what you just saw is, the Niners D, Dak led the league in interceptions per game, all that stuff like that. But bottom line is this defense isn't bad. It's really good for the Cowboys. And so the fact that the Niners are able to come in, take their best shot. Now, Rex Ryan, he said, I was going to punch this running game right in the mouth. Well, kind of did at the beginning. He also said it was going to be easy to beat the Niners because allegedly he beat Mike Shanahan during his career. But bottom line is like, they did take their best shot from that defense. And the fact that they never went down other than being down 6-3. I don't know. Like, they took every punch that they could from the Cowboys. And yes, Tony Pollard going out hurt the Cowboys. But I'm sorry. Like, I think the offensive woes early on was a little bit because Kyle was trying to get certain things done. I think he was getting befuddled. We forget he's going up against Dan Quinn. You're talking about two guys that worked together for a long time. Two guys that kind of know how each other operate probably more intimately than a lot of other people and a lot of other opponents throughout the league. And I think that in a lot of ways, I thought Dan Quinn was matching up with him the first half. And I think Kyle was a little bit flustered. But, and I would say flustered, but like I think Kyle was like, okay, I see you. And he was able to kind of stay the course, not get too far out of their system or structure, and ended up kind of imposing their will. And I think at the end of the day, D'Amico Ryans, he just got basically through this game. He didn't have any job he wants. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually tweeted out after the Fred Warner interception, the tip off Jimmy Ward. I said, D'Amico Ryans just got himself a job off that play. And, it was after the 4th and 4 that they had let up and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, again, this 49ers, you talk about Dallas being complete. The only two teams in the NFL that I think are more complete than the Cowboys are playing in the NFC Championship game. That's the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. That's it. And then I think it's Dallas is right there. Now, again, I'm not saying necessarily the best teams. There's some good teams in the AFC, but I don't think any of those teams are near as complete as these teams in the NFC. I think those teams are very quarterback driven and they're a little bit more flashy. They can put up points quick, that type of stuff. But when you just go basically through the trenches, back to the quarterback, into the secondary, and break it all down, I mean, these three teams are the most complete teams. And I think beating Dallas is impressive. Dallas wanted this game. This was a revenge game for them. They had asked for this. They went and took care of Tom Brady on grass, right? Like they went and did all the things that they supposedly couldn't do, and they were feeling good about themselves. And they came into this game ready to fight. I will say this. The 49ers are the most physical team. However, Dallas did their best to bring the fight to the 49ers early. And they were able to do that. And sometimes, in my opinion, it's like you just have to understand that these guys are paid to coach and play, just like the players on the 49ers. And it's not as easy as just saying, well, if we did this or change this or whatever. Sometimes they just do their job and they do it better than our team. And that's what I think happened for a part of this game until the 49ers physicality and all that started to open things up in the second half. That's how I saw that game playing out. Justin says the 49ers haven't done well versus mobile quarterbacks. How will they produce versus the Eagles quarterback? Are you concerned about their quarterback versus the Niners defense in the cold? Yes. Bottom line is yes. I am definitely concerned. The Eagles are a whole different beast. And I get it. It was just the Giants and the Giants weren't very good. And these are the things I'm hearing. The Eagles are not for play. Neither are the 49ers, though. The 49ers aren't suckers either. But this game is a heavyweight fight getting ready to go down next Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. There's no doubt about that. GTC Real says McGlinchey played great tonight. Good sign. Yeah, I mean, he got posterized on the one play by Parsons, but he actually played good. And he was the reason they were able to get in the end zone so easy on that CMC play there in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, McGlinchey was not bad at all. 2.0. How about Kittle, by the way? The catch completely changed the feel of the game. Also want to give Jed some love. He's done everything he could to try to win. Yeah, that Kittle play, David, it did change the game. It really did.
And I think that Kittle play is one of those things where clearly not a perfect ball at all from Brock Purdy. But like it's one of those I keep telling people, and it's we should say that. We should say that ball clearly, like, that was all Kittle, man. And I think that idea, though, that's going to go down as one of the, I told my buddy Jake here, I was sitting here as a Vikings fan wearing the Roger Craig jersey. I said, that is going to go down as one of the all-time great 49ers plays in history. Not only if they win this game, they get to that Super Bowl, they win it all. That is going to go down as one of the greatest plays. I maybe it's going to get lost in the shuffle because it's a divisional game. Not for me. You think he's going to catch it with just one hand, gets up in the air. I mean, honestly, and then Trayvon Diggs, this other thing, right as soon as he caught it, Trayvon Diggs was there to and it was a game of millimeters there, not inches.
Yep.
And so it's like, wow. I mean, I tell you, and that's the guy I said. Now, Kittle didn't get a touchdown. I missed on that. But I thought that Kittle was going to be the biggest producer in the receiving core, so to speak. And, now I shouldn't victory lap that because that one play is pretty anomalous in that game. But he made big plays, and the bottom line is they distribute the ball a lot. Debo did end up getting over his average of 10.5 touches plus targets. The game he had 11. So I think what you're going to see is, yes, I know that you talked about. I know this isn't the same question about Jalen Hurts, so maybe we'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm happy with where they're at, and I think they're going to rebound. I don't think they're going to see two clunkers early on, as much as you saw against Dallas.
Yeah, and I'll say, definitely, I agree that play was Kittle making the play on the receiving end, but Purdy did buy time, and you got to give him credit there. I mean, he was able to buy time. Kittle did a great job with the scramble drill. I mean, he came out of nowhere and made a hell of a catch, and that definitely turned that game around. I don't think there's any question about that. Kyle Shanahan, 808 Niner says, Kyle Shanahan finally figured out that he couldn't run outside. Took him 3 quarters, but he finally ran up the middle. Yeah, it took a little bit. It definitely took a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But he did figure it out, and the 49ers won, and that's a great thing. Jet Black Threat says, Cowboys D letting up while the Niners D was warming up. Yeah, I think, again, it was just like, it was like a heavyweight fight, body blow after body blow after body blow, and they just couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take it anymore.
I don't think it's fair to say, though, that the Dallas D completely let up. I think that, the Niners gave up a big play to CeeDee Lamb. There was the Dallas played well. I think you have to give credit. I don't think they laid up, or I think that they olayed or anything like that. I think it was one of those situations where, you wear teams down, and so I think it was a hard fought game.
Yeah, I think, again, yes, to be fair, I don't think Dallas gave up. I think that they were forced to just submit at the end. That final drive where they were able to go get the touchdown, even the Mitchell run, I mean, that showed you right there. Now, Mitchell doesn't stay in bounds, and he got a little squirrely there, but the Mitchell run, I mean, those plays weren't happening in the first half, but they know a run was coming, and they still couldn't stop it. They just eventually, it was it for them. Kyle says, am I alone in thinking the offense played well against a Dallas defense that also played well? Probably. I mean, played well. I guess what's playing well. I think it's fair to give the Dallas defense credit versus crapping on the 49ers offense. I think that's fair, but I don't think they played particularly well. They, in spots maybe, but not for most of that game.
No, and bottom line is, look, they should have been able to run better again. And people could say, oh, they only had these 8-9 man fronts. I just feel like, I think the sky isn't falling. They're going to the NFC Championship game. It's two good teams that are balanced to go up against each other. At the same time, I feel like in that situation, I would have liked to see a little bit more. Like I said, I was befuddled by the fact that there wasn't more motion early on. And I know they had scripted plays, and I get all that. But I feel there needs to be more creative ways to get Christian McCaffrey the ball, and not always between the tackles. And I think that sometimes that and maybe I don't think the calf thing is that big of a deal, but boy, Elijah Mitchell out-touched out of the backfield, I believe, Christian McCaffrey. And to be fair, I've kind of dogged on Elijah for not having the wherewithal to not go out of bounds, stay in bounds. But boy, that run was clutch. And so was the blocking. Tyler Kroft was inactive tonight, and I thought he'd been a little bit suspect sometimes in the run game blocking. I think actually near the end of the game, Charlie Werner, there was a couple of plays. You go back and watch the all 22 if you guys get a chance. Like Charlie Werner, eviscerated some dudes that freed up a couple of Elijah Mitchell runs that led up to that. So anyway, I don't think the offensive woes will carry on. I do think the Eagles D is one of the better in the league as well. I think, though, you're going to see Kyle with the kitchen sink against Philadelphia. I know we'll kind of talk about that in a minute.
For sure. Absolutely. NorCal Dan says, I'm a baseball and a fighting fan. This is boxing's Tommy Morrison versus Ray Mercer till one gets KO'd. That's the Eagles and Niners, two monsters, both healthy. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that they're both healthy. And that's what I want. I want to see teams be at their best. I want to see teams be fully healthy. And I just want the 49ers to be the best team. So I'm happy Philly's healthy. I'm happy the 49ers are healthy. This is going to be this is a game for the ages. Like, I'm overly excited about this one for sure. This has been, to me, this is like they've been on a collision course for like 8 weeks. That's the way that I view this matchup. Dustin says, thoughts on McGlinchey getting suplexed? Yeah, again, that wasn't a good look on that one play. Parsons is incredible, but overall, McGlinchey did play well, and he was the one that sprung McCaffrey to get in the end zone there on that final touchdown. So overall, he played well. Cabarrojo. Anyway, sorry for the pronunciation. Says, as someone who didn't pay attention to Philly this year, how would you describe their defense via SWOT analysis? I'll just say this. My thought on their defense is they are extremely talented. They have players all over the place. By far the deepest defensive line. I mean, I don't know. You tell me if this is hyperbole. This might be the deepest defensive line I've ever seen, David. I'm not overall the best, but the Eagles defensive line might be the deepest defensive line that I've ever seen. This is a defensive line that got 70 sacks this year. Defensive team that got 70 sacks. They got like 50 something from the defensive line. Linebackers, little more to be desired there. Secondary is extremely talented. I think the reason that Philly hasn't been great at times on defense, coaching. I think their defensive coach does some really weird things that just do not work in the NFL. And I think it costs them at times. But when he's in his bag and the defense is playing at their best, they're a really, really good defense. Do you think I'm off my rocker and saying this is the deepest defensive line maybe ever in Philly?
I could be. I mean, I think that they're going to come in waves, and like, you know, hey, the Niners probably aren't quite as deep, obviously, right? Like, but they have depth as well. I think you're going to have two strengths, right? Both of these teams have strengths on their defensive line, and so, yeah, it's going to be a test. It's absolutely going to be a test. I think the one thing is there's a couple teams left in the playoffs, and I'm not thinking ahead of the Eagles. But both the Eagles, the Bengals, the linebacking core. Mm-hmm. Now, I know it's I feel Kyle has a way of, you know, and this is what I was a little bit confused in this game. There was a couple of times where you had Christian McCaffrey lined up, and then you put him in motion. When you can put a running back in motion, where you're actually using him as a threat to a receiver, and it was just enough to get Leighton Vander Esch to kind of just move over, and then all of a sudden there's that quick strike on a third down for Ayuk or Jawan Jennings. Or I'm just saying, the Eagles linebacking core is still not, to me, I think that's their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And I think if there's any coach in the NFL that can exploit that in both the run and the pass game, it's Kyle Shanahan. And so
yeah,
I agree with you. I think that defensive line has a great depth. Their secondary, their cornerbacks have been very, obviously, Darius Slay, you have James Bradbury, kind of a little bit of a renaissance. But yeah, let's just
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Chauncey Gardner, yeah.
Secondary,
a guy the Niners could have drafted if they didn't draft Mitch Wishnowsky. But I digress. Yeah. So, but yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I think I really thought Nakobe Dean would be a major impact for them. The rookie they drafted there, he hasn't necessarily been that yet. Maybe in the future, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. Let's see. Nice. Last Minute Sports says, awesome game. Went down to the last minute. Nice. That's very nice. Hold on. All right, I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to get back to our topics. Niner Boss says, pitched a shutout in the second half if it weren't for the Ray fumble. You're right. And then he comes back. I'll give you one more. This Philly team gave up 40 to Dallas. Hold on. Just let's pump the brakes on in-season, regular season stuff, because, first of all, division games are always wonky. It's the same thing I said. A lot of people thought Philly would have trouble with the Giants because Philly barely beat the third-string Giants team, and now they're coming in with their dogs. No, regular season is over. We are done with that. In-division matchups don't matter. The 49ers defense gave up a crap ton to the Raiders. So does that mean that they're ripe for the picking? I don't think so. I appreciate it. And I'm not going to say it's not worth talking about, but for the most part, like regular season stuff, I'm just not going to look too far into it.
I will say this though. I think there's some, and maybe I'm on I wasn't nervous in this game, but I had a more begrudging respect for, like, I think the Eagles are a really good team, and you're playing at their house. Did somebody say the Vegas line's already +2?
No. It is plus. It's -2. It's -2.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
I think he said -1.5, and then he said +2. Yeah, it's -2.
-2 is a pick'em. Okay, so and I'm just saying that there are. You could at me afterward. I'm not looking past Philadelphia. It's going to be Eagles could easily win that game, but I agree. I think it's more of a pick'em than people that a lot of Eagles fans are going to want to say. And I think that yes, Jalen Hurts has some, that defense. There's just been some. You're right. It's the playoffs, but watch a lot of Eagles ball in certain situations, and they have a tendency to let some teams just kind of hang around. And I think the Niners played a game tonight that showed how they can do when you're playing in a tight game. I think it was good to have one of those games. I really believe that. It was good to finally have a game they were down by 1 to Seattle, but that got out of hand pretty quick in the third quarter, right? I think it was good to have that go all the way down to the wire, a one-possession game, and I think the Niners are going to be well equipped. I think I'm a little bit more concerned about the Cowboys defense than I was the Philly defense, and I know
really?
I know that because they'd had a little regression to, like, oh, look what they did against the Texans, or they'd actually played good defense against the Texans. There was some weird turnovers and something, but like the Cowboys have been pretty efficient defensively for a while. Eagles, with Gardner, things happen, but like the Eagles have done the same thing. And I'll say this. I think the Niners defense, if they play the way they did tonight, if they can replicate that in Philly, Niners win.
Yeah. Yes. I agree with that. Yes, I agree with that. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this one. I don't know. We'll talk through it. We'll talk through it here in a minute. Yes, the 12-game win streak continues. GTC Real says Brock Purdy dressed like a punter. Someone get this man some drip. He deserves it. He's only making like $900,000 a year living in California. Like, I heard that he actually has roommates in his apartment. He's not making a lot of money, unfortunately, to be living in Cali. He's not there yet. So I'm sure he'll be motivated to get that second big contract. But for now, unfortunately for Purdy, he's very underpaid. And that's a good thing for the 49ers, I guess. All right, let's talk about the defense real quick before we get into this Eagles matchup. Defense was dominant today. Defense was very dominant. They rattled very, very early on, rattled Dak Prescott. You could see it. I mean, Dak did his thing. He had a couple run plays. Like you said, was able to change some arm angles, but they rattled Dak. Deommodore Lenoir, for the second week in a row, gets a pick. Remember, he was supposed to be the one that was like the major issue in this secondary. And here he is, 2 picks in a row, or 2 weeks in a row with the pick. He did have a play where, I mean, listen, CeeDee Lamb just made a phenomenal catch on the deep play down the left sideline. It was pass interference, but he was right there like he usually is. This defense was very dominant. Again, there were times where they weren't even getting after Dak, but they were still making plays behind that defensive line. just overall, I mean, you're feeling uber confident about this defense. It sounds like from the last topic, but like you think this defense will be the difference in the NFC Championship? Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I think it has to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. I said if, right? And it's
Yeah.
like I think that I also though think that the Niners, I do think the Niners are going to be able to have more success than they did. And I think that Kyle's gonna. I think that it's gonna be one of those. I'm gonna push back against this thing. I know he doesn't trust Brock Purdy, and I have some guys in my mentions like, oh, you know, Purdy actually had a really bad game, and yada yada yada. I'm like, again, I watch all these games. I've watched all of these games, and I've seen some consensus top quarterbacks make some head scratching plays as well. And I guess I'm just saying, like, no way on paper. I still rank Brock Purdy below all of these guys, clearly. And I think there's just sometimes like we're waiting to victory lap on like a certain kind of way. Like you go up against a good defense, you have some snafus, you keep coming back. And I think that the Eagles, the one thing that scares me about the Eagles is they have, I would argue, their offense is what worries me a little bit more. Right. You've got Devontae Smith, you've got AJ Brown, you've got Dallas Goedert, you've got Miles Sanders having the best year of his career. You've got, guys like that can come in, even guys like Boston Scott, who are like totally reliable third, a guy running backs that can spell. Kenneth Gainwell, and an offensive line. Like, yeah, this is not going to be an easy game. I will say this though, like I think that the it's going to come down to the Niners D, and there's one guy. And it's Jalen Hurts. And I love the trajectory of his career. I'm so happy for that kid that has been able to come back and fight all of his doubters. And I'm sure I was one of them a couple of years back, right? But that's what I'm going to be looking for. Is Jalen Hurts going to play MVP ball, or is he going to play the way he played against Chicago and almost beefed it? Is he going to play, is he going to play the way he played against New York when they're trying to ice out the number 1 seed, almost beefed it? I'm just like, there's been other good quarterbacks out there like Jalen Hurts that are not immune to having some foibles. And I think and so when this Niners D, when you go up against them, they make you sweat. And Dak Prescott, I like Dak. I say people could say Dak shit the bed tonight. I think the Niners defense made him shit the bed tonight. And it's like, this is where I'm saying, like, they come out with that attitude and they got that chip on their shoulder. I think it's going to be a nail biter in Philly. I really do.
I do too. I'm assuming this is a good thing, Sean. I guess it depends on what you think about Brock Purdy, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Okay. Let me be clear, MK Dub. I say only 900K. I say that in reference to his teammates and what some of the big time players make in the NFL. 900K is great for average Joes, right? Like us, but 900K when you start to work in agent fees and taxes of California and all that. I mean, he's bringing home 400, 500 maybe. Like that's, compared to his teammates, that's not FU money. I'll say that. He's not making FU money. He's making great money, but he's not making FU money. So he's not going to be able to go out and just buy crazy designer everything. He can't afford that, is what I'm saying.
Do we $900,000 to put your body on the line every single play that the ball is snapped? $900,000 living in Santa Clara.
Yep.
Like guys, like what do you I mean, 900K is only 900. I have no problem saying that. And I just want to I'm not trying to clown, but look, these dudes deserve 10 times what they make playing in the NFL. I'm sorry. And I'm not going to try to invoke, I won't bring up the specific clip. Like these dudes, I mean, if I returned a punt, if you or anybody, one of us sat there and had to get hit one time, the way that Jimmy Ward finished the game, if Jimmy Ward tackled me the way he tackled, how did that end the game? Was that Zeke? Who was that? No, it wasn't Zeke. I can't remember who it was. If he tackled me like that, my sternum would be sticking out the back of my skull.
Yeah, real talk.
I mean, so yeah. I don't know. He's a quarterback of a team, man.
I get it. Nitten says Hurts is not going to play as horrible as Dak, so it's going to be hard to replicate what they did against Dallas. Dak was just plain trash. Again, I'll go back to what David said. I think the 49ers are to credit for that. I think the 49ers are big time to credit for the way that Dak played. On the goal line says, Jesse, I haven't been here in a while, been busy with work and school, but just wanted to say hey and bang, bang, Niner gang. Thank you on the goal line. I really appreciate it. And you're right. I haven't seen you in a while. Happy to see you back in the chat. Glad to know that you're doing very, very well. Let's go Niners. Mr. G, what's up, Mr. G? He says, you can't blow everyone out. Great teams find ways to win. I mean, yeah, bottom line, we were down to the final 8 teams here in the NFL. The 49ers are a very good team. Hopefully great. Maybe they win a Super Bowl, but they're not like blowing anybody out at this point. That's not where we're at. These are just good teams matching up against each other. You know, maybe we could argue that the Giants didn't belong, or even the Jags to a certain extent didn't belong. But really, most of these teams get here. It's very tough sledding. And, you know, the 49ers took care of business today for sure. Porn star Purdy going to be able to afford his own place after he swings that monster cheese.
P-O-U-R-N? What is that, porn?
Yeah, well, yeah, like he's pouring. Anyways, all the way to a Super Bowl. Suck it, cowgirls. Oh my gosh. Justin says, what would you consider a win for our DBs, yards wise, versus the receivers of the Eagles? Oh man, I think if they can hold both those receivers under 100 yards, I think that's a major win. Well, I think that because those receivers are good.
This defense has been nut break, and this is the thing where, like, I'm telling you, like, this Cowboys offense is good. It's the best in the NFL. Okay, yeah. I never felt any nerves of this defense on the field tonight. Even the drive that they had a touchdown, I think it was like 15 plays and 75 yards. We're talking like, you know, it was just methodical. There was not a single big play there. And the drives where they gave up a big play, like 2nd and 16, the first drive, I think Charvarius Ward was a little bit off in that zone. And then you talk about Demo on that big play to CeeDee Lamb on the pass interference play. Every other drive that they had a big play, punt, force them to do something like. And so it's a bend not break D. And so, yeah, I'm not too concerned about all that. I think that one thing the Niners really do well in is that they operate really well when space is clogged up. And I think that, and I think that's where I just hope they don't give it the big play. That's been my Achilles heel for the Niners before, and it hasn't. DK had one last week. You know, that's my big concern is an AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, big play.
Yeah, and again, also a very good tight end. Good. I mean, it's a good team. It's a good team. 2.0 says Purdy's going to have a lot of endorsements soon. I think he'll be okay. Disney will pay him fat if he's able to say, I'm going to Disneyland. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he'll probably get those. He's clean cut, smart kid. You're the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. You probably are going to get some endorsements. So I agree. But for right now, it's $900K. All right, let's get into it, David. Philadelphia Eagles. Here we are. NFC Championship in Philly. Again, this to me seemed like the obvious NFC matchup. Collision course for 8 weeks, really. I mean, once the 49ers beat, maybe not quite 8 weeks. Well, if you include the playoffs. Once the 49ers beat Miami, I was like, all right, this is it. It's us in Philly. And so I'm watching Philly close. Hurts goes down. They look, beatable. They had some other weird games against like the Colts and whatnot where it got tough. The Eagles are a very good team. They've got home field advantage for a reason. They had an MVP type season from Hurts before he got injured. They're coached very well, I think, especially offensively. I think their head coach is very good in Sirianni. I love his fire. They're the home team. They're the more rested team at this point. I mean, just early thoughts. You don't need to go crazy, give me a score prediction, anything crazy like that, but just early thoughts. I mean, you feeling good about this matchup? You worried? Like, where's your head at with this one?
I think that, look, like I said, this Eagles defense is stout. I want to just reiterate this though, and you don't go week to week. The Giants team is the biggest fraud in the NFL. People could say the Vikings. Oh, the Vikings beat. The Vikings won a game. The Vikings won a game a couple weeks ago. Best of 5 series, Vikings probably win. Right? They've got pieces. It didn't work out. And the Vikings defense sucks. The Giants are an embarrassment. I'm sorry. And then Brian Daboll did a great job. But that was I want people to understand that that's not going to be the Niners walking into Philly. And I think that one thing, like I said, that the Philly D has done is they've let some teams just kind of hang around, and they've been able to handle the Giants a couple times. Congratulations. And I'm not undermining the Eagles. The thing where I feel like the Niners have an advantage, like I said, is they might not have, you could say A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Is that better than your Ayuk, Debo? Whatever you want to debate. I think the totality of their pieces in the way where they can have success in the short passing game, with where you putting linebackers in a bad situation where all of a sudden they're going to shift to guys that they're just not equipped to take care of. And we saw a little bit of that today in Dallas and having success. Ayuk had a couple times like that with a linebacker on him for whatever reason. I think that's going to be the difference. I think that the Seahawks are going to make some plays. There's going to be some turnovers. I think Purdy's probably going to get an interception where he's got to come back. His luck's got to run out. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the defense is going to come to play. And I think the Niners defense is better than the Philadelphia Eagles defense. And it's all going to come down to if the Niners cannot, I know this sounds cliched, but tonight I think it really showed. If the Niners really can't get comfortable in the run game, they're going to have to manufacture some things. And if they have some drives stall and they're not able to get there, and the Eagles have a kicker that they trust, right? And Jake Elliott, right? So that's going to be something where I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think this is my prediction. I think this game comes down to whoever has the ball last. I think it's being tied. It could be what, and it's going to come down to a last minute play. I think they're that evenly matched. That being said, I don't think the Niners are outmatched or outclassed or should even be considered an underdog, even though they're on the road. I think this is a pick 'em against two good teams, and that says a lot with the fact that you have Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback. I think Brock Purdy has shown that he is flawed, that he has limitations and weaknesses. And I think he's also shown that time and time again, his confidence stays up, his teammates end up trusting him, and this offense has been able to stay the course and stand their ground. And I think you're going to see them put up more points than 19 against Philly. And if the Niners can hold the Eagles to, I think if they can hold them to 24 points or less, I really feel like the Niners end up winning this game.
I think that's a fair assessment. When I look at the Philadelphia Eagles, again, I think their glaring weakness, agree with you, is at linebacker. When it comes to the players, I think their defensive coordinator, I think he's lacking. If Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, I don't know if I'd pick the 49ers, because coaching really does matter, especially when we're here. And they have so many great players on that defense. I mean, you've got 4 players on that defensive line with 10 or more sacks. Again, if you just took their backup defensive line, it would be a top level starting a defensive line in this league. It is a very, very good defensive line that they've got, very deep. They've got playmakers all over in that secondary. Bradbury, I believe, was an All-Pro this year. You've got Big Play Slay, who's been there, has been an All-Pro, I believe. I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the list goes on. The defense is stacked, but the linebacker is less to be desired. And again, the 49ers, they've got the perfect team to exploit that. They've got Kittle, they've got CMC, they've got Debo when they want to use him out of the backfield. They just have the perfect team to exploit a weak linebacker core. And I think that ultimately is an issue, especially if you don't have a coach who can scheme his butt off week in and week out. Now, last week, I thought he had a great game plan, a great scheme. Maybe an extra day to scheme for the 49ers will be enough for him to get his ish right. But I don't think their defensive coordinator is going to outcoach Shanahan. And I'm not sure that offensively they're going to outcoach D'Amico Ryans either. I think that's going to be a big deal. Now, Hurts is a problem. Hurts is absolutely a problem. He's going to be a pain in the butt all night long. He's going to get some of those third down runs that are going to feel like backbreakers and are going to be frustrating, all those things. It's going to be a hell of a fight. Right now, I'm leaning towards the 49ers. Let's see how the week plays out. Let's see how health is, how the storylines are, all those things. But right now, I'm definitely leaning towards the 49ers. But man, this to me is a definition of a pick 'em. It really is. If you went with either side, I don't know that I could come up with an intelligent argument to say you're off your rocker. Let me just say that.
Yeah, and I think that, Reed Blankenship has had a nice rookie year at Middle Tennessee. I just feel like that's a lot of pressure to put a rookie in. I think he's had a decent year. I think Kaiser White is a huge liability in coverage. I think TJ Edwards has had, I think maybe a little bit. I think some of those guys are really good byproducts, though, of like what their pieces are around them. I just think it's a young core. And it's guys that I think that Kyle can exploit. And I really think that people forget like how important that is. And so in that short game, one thing that the Niners did tonight, they got a couple sacks. Micah never got home. And there were a couple of plays where they had some weird things where they didn't block. Like Kyle Juszczyk missed several blocks. There were just some things where they didn't pick up, and the execution was just a little off. I think they refined that. I don't think that you see, and I think you see the Niners come out and say they're gonna. I don't look 29 pass attempts. I think you see that again. I honestly don't think Kyle's going to be afraid to do that in the short game, and I think they're going to go up tempo. I think they're going to get people in misdirection, and I think it's going to be tight. I respect the Eagles a lot. I think they're the Niners and the Eagles are the two best teams in the NFC, and my top 5 teams all year are throughout. I picked Cowboys at the beginning, but most year I've been saying Cowboys, Eagles, no particular order. Eagles, Niners, Bengals, Chiefs, Bills. Okay, now you got Bengals, Chiefs, Niners, Eagles. Those are 4 out of my top 5. Those are the 4 teams I thought had a legitimate chance of winning the Super Bowl. Here they are, and honestly, any one of these teams can beat the other team. I really feel that. I don't think anybody should be looked at as an underdog at all at this point.
No, not at this point. We got 4 very good teams. This is going to be a great Final Four. Gizmo Maltese says, we beat the Cowboys in the playoffs again. Revenge for 92 and 93. I don't care about the Eagles tonight. I'm getting drunk on Cowboys tears. Hey, more power to you, brother. More power to you. Altcoin says Purdy faced off against Jalen Hurts in college November 9th, 2019. It was a great game and a great QB battle. Hurts came out on top 42-41. Well, not this time, my friend. Purdy's going to come out on top. Johnny Velocity. Okay, I'm glad that I saw this comment because a lot of people are saying this. I think the Giants and Vikings are the biggest frauds. First of all, I don't think the Bills are frauds. I think they ran out of steam. I think they got very hurt towards the end of the season, and they just lost a lot of their big horses. So I don't think the Bills are frauds at all. I just think, unfortunately for them, they got injured at the wrong time. But let's talk about the Giants for a second, because I don't disagree with you. I don't think the Giants were juggernauts by any means. I think they played well better than what they were expected to this season, and I get that. But let's look at the Eagles against the Giants in San Francisco versus Seattle, because I think both of those teams, those games are very, very comparable now. You had 2 teams that were rightfully so big underdogs going on the road to play juggernauts in the Eagles and the 49ers. 2 teams that are division foes, and 2 teams that were 0-2 against the juggernauts in the Eagles versus the Eagles and 49ers. The Eagles' dismantlement of the Giants was far more impressive than what the 49ers did to the Seahawks. I mean, let's give them credit. Let's give them credit. Doesn't mean they're going to win the game, but when you look at what was the most impressive win, the way they dismantled the Giants was, that game was never close. That game was never in question. From snap 1 to the final snap, they dominated that game. And it was the most impressive performance. I don't care who the foe was, in my opinion, in these playoffs. Again, that doesn't mean that they're better than the 49ers or they're going to beat them. But when you look at those games and how similar they were in the situations, the Eagles handled business a lot better than the 49ers did against Seattle. And that's just facts.
I will say that's very true. And I think that, honestly, I will go back. The offense left points on the board with field goals in the first half. The 49ers offense didn't struggle though against Seattle, that Seattle defense. And I think that was really more of the uncharacteristic kind of little plays that happened where they kind of let the Seahawks hang around, getting field goals in the red zone when you should have gotten touchdowns. That being said, you're right. And you can't, it matters and it doesn't. And so, yeah, kudos to Eagles that you faced a shitty Giants team. So I'm just going to say it. I've been saying it all year, but you dismantled them. It wasn't close. It was never close. You were up 28-0. I'm sorry. That's an ass beating. That's what you're supposed to do. And sometimes in those games, like, oh, you didn't have as many yards. Who cares? They didn't have to. Right? Like, so no, I have nothing but respect for the Eagles. And like, I put it this way, I'm not going to put a score prediction out there later. We'll have to wait till the end of the week, but I'm telling you right now, it is a true pick-em in my estimation. If it ends up being a blowout for one of the other teams, that's going to be the most shocking thing to me that I've seen all season. I just think you're going to see a nail biter.
I agree. Waruna, what's up, Waruna? It's been a while. He said, we've already overachieved this season. Fells Purdy, baby. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, this team should win a Super Bowl. Waruna, I think this team. He says, can we get 500 likes? There's 506 watching. Hey, that'd be great. I'll take it. I'll take 100 likes. Every time that you like, it helps the algorithm and forces more people our way. David, it's late for you. I know you got school in the morning. Well, you're a teacher. I know you got to get up early with your kids. I do as well. I want to say thank you so much to the chat for tapping in the way that you always do. We got a great week of coverage. We got a great week of behind enemy lines. This is going to be fun. Enjoy tonight. Get ready for this clash with the Eagles. I think we might have an all-time game headed our way on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to it. David, as always, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.